What's up, TCC, TU, and ORU? It's your boy Samson back for another podcast, and I'm excited about this one because we have with us our very first TU student who's going to be representing. Introduce yourself, bro.
Hi, I'm Michael. I'm a sophomore physics student at TU and yeah, grew up here. Still
Grew
live
up here
here.
in,
Yeah.
hey, come on now. Tulsa represent. This is the real. So, without further ado, man, we're gonna jump into the story, bro. We're gonna jump into your story. Tell us a little bit about how you got physics that's real, bro. First of all, I hope we get to a point where we understand that. But how did you get here, bro? Break it down.
Um, yeah, so for forever I wanted to do physics. I don't remember exactly why. I'm pretty sure it probably just made me sound smart whenever I was talking about it. And so I was like, oh yeah, I want to sound smart, so let's do physics. And then eventually I found it cool and kind of fell in love with it. But uh I had definitely not planned to go to TU. I had planned to not stay in state at all because I was like, what? There's like a good physics program in Oklahoma. It's like, no. But,
That's
um,
real.
but then, uh, funny how things turn out that, being the procrastinator I am, I waited till, the week, before New Year's. That's when most of the applications for the schools I wanted to go to were due. And I got COVID, uh, pretty bad, and was like stuck in my bed and ached so bad I couldn't sit up for more than like half an hour at a time, much
Yeah.
less walk or do anything or type out essays, whatever. So then I just had to say, well, uh-oh. And then I looked and there was some other school and there was one other school on my backlist that I was like, I might apply to, depending on how I feel about the applications, called Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute.
Whoa, can you say that one more time?
Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute,
Where's that at?
upstate New York.
Okay, because I was
Um,
gonna say I never heard of that before.
I hadn't either, and then I got emails from them. And I went and I checked them out, and the curriculum looked cool, but yeah, and I was pretty interested. But then, and then I was like, well, okay, I'll just look into TU at this point, because now I have one school that I've applied to. I need at least a second. So I looked into TU, came on a campus tour, and like up until that point, everybody was super helpful. So I applied, and throughout my admissions counselor was really, really helpful and really easy to contact. Unlike how the other school, I don't want to say that name every time,
It's
so
all
I'll just
good.
call it
It's
RPI. Um, but unlike, well, from my experience, RPI was not responsive, and there was no like personal, like, there's no personal help, I guess, or help on a personal level with my situation.
yeah.
I'm not saying it was like a bot, but you could tell that this person had like 1,000 other students that they were trying to get to come.
Yep.
So, anyways, and then also some financial situations and some unknowns with the other school. So I ended up here, and yeah, and it worked out. I think, yeah, I mean, it worked out so much for the better. I think, well, probably. I guess I can't know for certain what was going to happen there, but
Yeah, and it's interesting because I feel like not every, but a lot of the students I talked with, it was a very similar story where the school that they're at, it's like I actually didn't want to, like I had no intentions of coming or being here, and
right.
so it's interesting. It's cool to see that that's a similar story here, and I'm curious at what point was it where you're like, you know what, I'm glad that I'm here. Like, was there a point that happened, or
Um,
maybe even I'm here for a reason, or I'm here for a purpose, or like what point was it that it changed from don't see myself here to it's not bad.
well, I think honestly it was more so that I stayed in Tulsa rather than at TU. I've loved my time here. and it's opened many doors that I don't think I would have had the opportunity to have at many other schools. But I think primarily it's because I stayed in Tulsa, and um, at my home church. And I think the big thing I'm thinking of is when Eliab came
Mhm.
to fellowship, which is the church I go to.
For those
I
that
just
don't know,
realized, yeah,
Eliab is a pastor who was here in Oklahoma and I believe moved back. He was my best friend, or he is my best friend. Currently has been for many years. Anyways, I just had to say that
yeah,
because that's
yeah.
my
I
boy. Shout
realize I
out
don't want to get
Eliab.
caught up in just conversation and say all these names. It's like these are side characters in some greater no, um, but up until, and maybe I'm moving too quick and I'm moving too far forward, but
Hey, it's cool. Just go at the pace, bro.
but I had talked to well, and I don't remember exactly where, but I know that like I had heard growing up, like my mom would say that like, like I feel that you are called. And she's like, and I'm not just saying that because, you're my child and
Mm,
it's the good and proper thing to do, but like ever since you were born, I had a feeling. And I realize I sound so like pompous saying that out loud now, but that is truly what I was told. And then I'd heard some similar things from other mentor or the same type of figure in my life. But then you know it was really jarring almost when Eliab came. He was
mm,
like, because I remember I had shaken his hand and told him my name one time, and then the next interaction I had with him is I got a text that was, "Hey, this is Eliab. Um, call me whenever you get a chance. Um, I I think there he's like, I see something in you and I want to develop that." And I saw it and was like, so what? Like,
yeah.
because obviously that's not at all the road that I was assumed to have been taking. And if he's watching this, I know that he's probably having a huge "I told you so" type moment. Um, but anyway, so then I called and we talked, and then some other stuff happened. But then, anyways, we ended up um, becoming friends. I feel like not even just in a way that's like, well, yeah, not in a way that was just, I am doing this for means to an end, whatever,
Yeah.
but, actually knew each other. And
I think it's really cool that you bring this kind of aspect of your story out because I feel like there's a lot of people who kind of isolate themselves.
right,
And I think of every person, no matter what sector they're in, that is on a road to or is at a place of prominence or like fame or like have succeeded in some type of endeavor or they quote unquote became somebody, right?
right,
When you listen to their story is not a story of isolation. What I mean by that is not a story of I saw, I did it myself. I told myself I could do it and nobody else was, there was nobody else there. I grinded from the time I was 9 years old
yeah,
and I made it, right? Like it wasn't, there was always somebody kind of in the background who said something, who did something, who gave an idea, who gave some type of inspiration, who spoke something. And it almost sounds like Eliab did that for
right,
you. Like he helped alongside of, mom and other people who have said, yeah, there's a call on you. But it sounds like Eliab really
right,
worked to bring it out.
right. And it wasn't, and getting to know him and establishing that friendship, it made it almost real because obviously it's one thing like whenever your mom will tell you, oh, you're going to do great things, right? You'd almost, I mean, a mom's not going to tell her child, you'll be all right, you'll be mediocre, right? But so obviously, that's one thing. But whenever somebody actually cares enough like, to seek you out about it, and then
Mhm.
also um, still do that in a regard of whether or not, because then like every time you tell me about it, I roll my eyes and be like, okay, whatever, whatever, buddy. Um, but now, um, but then towards November, December, it kind of got to a point, and I was in a class here too, called Jesus: A Contemporary Perspective. And I fell in love with that class. That was a
Mm,
great class. Um, and but towards the end of it, I kind of um, almost have become, in a sense, disillusioned with physics. Like
mm,
it's just, and this is where I say I'm maybe jumping too far ahead, but I think it's, anyways. But okay, but getting disillusioned with it, in a sense, that is this something in my mind that is something that I really want to pursue? Is this something that I'm willing to dedicate my life to?
yeah.
And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. I mean, obviously, like, all my best friends on campus here, that is what they want to do. Um, and more power to them. But, as I've spent more time and more time, there's just been, I can't shake the idea of, sitting in an ivory tower of academia for the rest of my life, while there are people on the ground who are, I mean, they're living paycheck to paycheck, or they've got no home, and and they're starving. And, that, I mean, you look domestic or international, whatever. Is this really something that I can essentially turn a blind eye to in my life purpose? Because,
Mm,
I've talked with people who say, yes, you can help with that. Like, your job necessarily doesn't define you or whatever, on what you can and can't do and make impact on the world. But at the same time, for me, when I look at it, at least in a personal sense, I'm kind of seeing it as, well, but if this is something that I pick to pursue over the wellness of my siblings in Christ, then, like, then that means to me that this is more important than their well-being. And if I am truly to live in the calling of Christ, and the calling and the, yeah, calling would be the right word, of to be a disciple. Like, these two, for me, these two things don't line up.
yeah.
There's something out of whack there. Um,
No, that's interesting, man. And as I'm hearing you, it sounds like in taking your physics class, and then it was Jesus contemporary,
Jesus: A Contemporary Perspective. Yeah.
in contemporary perspective. So taking that class, it sounds like that class kind of opened your eyes a little bit more to maybe your calling or what you feel like you want to do in life. Is
Yeah.
that
Yeah. Um, yeah. Uh, yes, because, I've grown up and lived in one church my entire life. So
mhm.
all of the theology that I've heard, whatever, has been filtered through, Adventist Fellowship's flavor of Adventism,
Yeah.
for lack of a better word. And in that class, what you do is you go from the writing of the Gospels and the Pauline epistles, and you move to essentially modern day,
Mhm.
in the theology and formulation, specifically the formulation of Christ, and who he is slash was, and what's important, what's not important. Um, but that really opened my eyes, but then also to see, what some of these people who were important in the formulation of these ideas, what they were doing and what they valued, um, that also really opened my eyes. Because, like I said, if I assume that every one of these is, a pastor at and some big church, and that their ideas were preserved because, they had the big church, and to some extent that is true. However, there also has to be something, in my mind, there has to be some oomph behind it, some reason that we should listen to these guys other than, they have their money. And I'm specifically thinking of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, with Cost of
Mhm.
Discipleship, and reading his story. Uh, that that was really a huge eye-opening moment for me, because, um, I mean, it made this call that seemed so abstract so real. Um, and it was no longer about the talk of, you know well, I love my neighbor, or, yeah, I love you, but, I got to get to work, or,
Yeah.
but it really made something that was, what I felt like, um embody the type of love that Christ came with. If that
Yeah.
makes sense. And really,
100%.
and to see, and not to say that I haven't met people like that, but to see that, this is something that people do still. This is not just, heroes of antiquity or um, people that fought in these wars or did these huge movements. And a lot of these did take place in huge wars and huge movements. But to see that what they're doing is so real and so grounded today, well, in a certain sense of like what they're doing was so, almost felt in some cases so viscerally real.
Yeah.
Um, in my mind, that kind of shifted my perspective of, okay, I don't have to, to pursue this calling doesn't mean I have to be in this little narrow box that I've grown up imagining it as. Um,
Well, as you're talking, I'm just thinking and I'm chewing on the idea of, okay, you grew up and now you're coming to realize some more things changing, potentially changing some paths and trying to reevaluate some paths. I'm curious about what was it that, and maybe you don't even have to dive into it if you don't feel comfortable, but what are some things that you grew up that you were like having to rearrange or change or like refocus? And you don't have to dive into everything, but
no,
you can
I
maybe share one
I love
thing
to
that
talk about that.
he said, I love to
So
talk
I
about it.
laugh because I don't know that you realize how big of a can of worms you're opening here, but
Oh man.
that's what I was going to say too when you texted me that, no, they normally go for like 30, 45 minutes, whatever. It's quick, it's chill. I almost, I had even typed out, sounds good, but just a warning. You asked me to talk, but I didn't because I was like, and I was at rehearsal for an Easter program. So I was like, I don't have time to elaborate on what that means, but, if we're just talking reevaluate almost everything.
Mm,
Um, and there are some things that I've kept and there's some things that I have done away with, that, I'm almost more, some things I feel like I even have to be cautious about talking to other people um, um, with their walk and where they're at, if almost nothing out of, a responsibility of not, well, it's like Plato's allegory of the cave. If you look out of this dark cave too fast, then, you're going to get blinded by the sunlight.
yeah.
And I don't want to bring that sunlight into the cave and flashbang, now you're all blind. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But just going through the main big one is the belief of biblical inerrancy.
Mm,
That's something I have looked at and I have studied and I have thought through, and that's something I have not kept in my walk. But for me, it's been a deepening of faith. And, and it almost, in a sense, was like a burden off my shoulders.
yeah.
I don't know how far you want me to go into that, but
No, it's cool. And just for clarity, when you say biblical inerrancy, are you saying like the common thought was the Bible doesn't contain like errors? Is that what you're
right,
referring
or
to?
it doesn't contain errors, and it's all, it all has the same picture and idea in mind,
Mm-hmm.
and it all fits together super nicely like this.
Yeah.
And you can make it happen, but to me, the things you have to do to make it happen is, you're kind of, in my mind, I'm like, is it really worth it to do all that? Like, you spend so much time doing all that and you get caught up in, well, here it condemns this, but in other places it doesn't. And so then you have to decide, well, do I condemn this or not? So what's going to be more important?
Mm.
But they're all important. So at a certain point, I was just like, whatever, man. But, yeah, but I almost now feel like that I don't have the burden um,
Explain
to
those
explain
errors.
some of these
Yeah.
things, right? And not even just to say that I've gotten lazy, um, but here's the thing that I heard, and then I was like, that is so true.
Mm.
But the stronger your conception and your belief, and I guess belief, not belief, but the stronger your conception and your understanding of a God, the stronger your theism or your atheism becomes, right? So,
Mm.
with me, obviously, my theism and my Christian faith has been what's been deepening and such. And so, with this idea of a God and looking at it um, through the lens of all these different voices and all these different collections of stories and ideas and conceptions and all these things about God, it opens the door for personal experience in my and
Yeah.
personal faith and personal conviction. And so with that, I really feel like that now faith is so much more central in my walk in a way that I never understood, um, in a way that I never understood faith before. That it really is truly about trust
Hmm.
in a God that you don't have their phone number of, I joke all the time, about, I'll hear sermons, whatever, uh, that are, some crazy sermons, God told me to say da 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 da. I'm like, oh, really? What's his phone number? I'd love to call him up and chat, but, um, but to really have that faith and that
Yeah.
reliance in God rather than in a book that can have answers, and not to say that answers are bad, but in a sense, if I'm just, everything is held in this book, if this book goes down, my faith goes down with it. Um, but B, that makes God so much bigger,
Yeah.
that, this is not all that there is to be said about a God. And, and so my faith has become, but not only has my faith been deepened, but now my devotional life has been so much deepened as well, because it's not, you know, oh, I'm feeling bad. Let me just turn and, and this is God directly talking to me. Um, but that real connection and that real spiritual aspect of it
Yeah.
has become so, so important in maintaining that connection because, like I said, I don't have the handbook written by the finger of God.
Yeah.
Um,
No,
yeah,
no. Hey, listen, man, I definitely appreciate you sharing that because, and this is just have been kind of my understanding as I've sat and talked with some students and both on and off this podcast where I came to realize a lot of people are coming into university and to college and you're down the street, but some people, they're leaving a city, they're leaving
right,
a state, leaving a country to go to school. And you really have to start figuring things out. You really have to start figuring out where is it that I'm going to go, not just with our major, but also where am I going to go with my faith or where am I
right,
going to go with my belief about life, about the world, my understanding. And it sounds like you've been going on a journey of both this faith and this major, kind of where am I going? Like, how am I
right.
going to process all of that? And it sounds like it's been good. And I think a lot of people are at times scared to venture out, to learn, to grow, to figure
Yeah.
things out
And
on their own.
it's very tough. And like I said, I'm not, and in no way am I trying to give a prescription. Some people might hear this and say that's almost, why I lost my faith, da 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 da, and that's their walk and that's their journey. Um, and I'm supportive of, uh, you know, of the walk of faith and becoming like Christ,
Mhm.
especially in our actions and the way we walk. I think that is one of the most utmost important things as a Christian that we can be worried about. So,
Yeah.
like I said, this is not a prescription, but I also do want to say that it's okay to leave and to change.
Mhm.
Because I heard somebody say recently that every church is a progressive church. Just pick your point in time. Uh,
That's very true.
because I mean, if you look back 1700s, early 1800s, like white churches are accepting of slavery.
Mhm.
And so now, I mean, we've had to leave that behind for what now seems like obvious reasons.
Yeah.
And and that's the only way, in my opinion, change is the only way to push forward into something new, into something better.
Yeah.
We don't always know that it's going to be something better, but we do know it's something new. And to be paralyzed by the fear that this may not be better, I think does a disservice to our attempt at growth, at progress, if you will.
Yeah. And I think that's the whole idea, or the concept behind even just the fitting room, right? Where people come on and they're listening, right? They're listening to your story, they're listening to the story of someone else. And you don't have to, right? Like the idea of the fitting room is you don't have to buy it, right? Like,
Right.
but I think trying it on is worth something because you can see that if it fits, cool. And if it doesn't fit, then cool. You don't, it's not the checkout, right? Like you don't
Right,
have, you're not coming out saying, all right, where's the cash? Like, no, you don't have to buy it. You can go hang it up, but you know where to come back to
right,
if you're interested in hearing more and learning more about said topic of whatever a person might be expressing. And when, as we listen to each other, I think it develops growth as well, because
right,
now someone listening can hear your story and say, man, I didn't know, somebody could view the Bible this way
right,
and it deepen their faith. That's interesting.
right. Well, and and in no way did I go about this on my own either,
Hmm.
because obviously Eliab was super important in this in this part, because so much of this is also tied to a calling.
Hmm.
Because with all of my questions and my doubts, and you know, and not to say that I don't have them. I in no way have everything figured out, obviously, um, but with all of my questions and my doubts, and kind of the feeling like the inability to move, out of this framework that I had, grown up in for so long, I feel like also kind of paralyzed me from pursuing this idea, this calling. Why would I want to sit somewhere and regurgitate the same things I've heard forever and ever,
Yeah.
even if some things on one, like, on from one perspective I agree with it, from another I disagree, and I just stand, with my feet on uneven ground, that I couldn't be comfortable doing that. And I think honestly that might have been one reason why I liked STEM so much,
Mm.
well, until I started learning about quantum mechanics. But because in most of STEM, there is a right answer, or there is, like a solution. And obviously, like, data needs interpretation, and there are various interpretations. I get that, but for the most part, there is one logical conclusion to draw, or there's one description of the real world that fits well. And
Yeah.
if we find a better one, we get rid of this one and we put it in.
Yeah.
Um, and that is definitely, there is definitely a comfort in that.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's the cool thing about also being in college and where we are now, where it's like you don't have to have it all figured out. Like
I
people
hope
people
not.
come on people come on and they record and they share their story and share some of their perspective. But the truth is, and this is my hope, which is in 10 years they listen back and they're like, oh, I don't really agree with that. Right?
Mm,
Like I don't agree with that. And the reason I say I hope that is because that shows sign of growth,
right,
right? It shows sign that you've grown over the last 5, 10 years and not like I held on to this belief and
right.
I accepted nothing else. It's like, okay, cool, but growth is important, a part of the journey. And that's what it sounds like you're kind of saying as well.
Yeah,
Like this continuation of growth.
yeah. I, I don't ever think I'll get to, well, I don't think anybody ever really gets to a point where they have it all figured out. And I don't, that's not a hot take or anything, but, um, yeah, so why should I act like it?
No, that's real. That's real. I was gonna say, like, hey, what's happening in life right now?
Oh man, everything.
But it's like, yo, he dove in. But it's all good. If you have anything else that you want to share, is like currently right now, like
Currently,
challenges,
right
some
now,
some positive things. What's currently happening in your life right now?
um, I guess really to be completely open and honest is, I've talked about, oh, maybe this is the path that I'm supposed to go on. I have no idea. I know that I have been convicted a certain way. Where I'm gonna go, I don't know. What
No, that's
what
real.
I'm gonna do tomorrow. I mean, even what I'm gonna do over the summer. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
No, that's real.
just gonna have to take it on faith, and Sparrow doesn't worry about what he's gonna eat tomorrow. Why should I?
Hey, no, that's
So
real. That's real. And so like it sounds like right now you're just kind of in this decision kind of phase of like trying to figure out, okay, what are we gonna decide for right now
right,
versus what am I gonna decide, or like how am I gonna map out the rest of this next several years?
yeah, pretty much. And I have not a clue where I'm starting with any of this stuff. Like I said, but I got time. I'll
You
figure it
got you
out.
got time. Sophomore, bro. You got
Exactly.
2 more years to figure out life. No.
And then I better have it
And
figured
then you
out.
better have it
Yeah,
figured out.
exactly.
No, that's cool. That's real. That's real. Is there you know, and sometimes it helps to think in options. At least for me, it helps sometimes to just think in options instead of like thinking this is the path that I want to be in 10
Right.
years. I'm like, okay, what are like 8 different paths, right? Like what are a couple that I'm like, okay, this sounds cool, this sounds cool, this sounds cool, and maybe you can include in there, maybe the physics is one way. You're like, okay, what does that look like
Yeah. I
that I
mean,
want to do? Or maybe what did you want to do before some of these revelations?
yeah. Well, I don't know, because even before some of this stuff, I was kind of like, you know, where really do I want to go? Um, and to me, there's so many paths that I just have to take it one day at a time. Well, and not entirely. I'm not going to show up and say, okay, this is the deadline to apply to whatever. You know, do I apply or do I not apply? Or not necessarily that, but one step at a time. Because
Hmm.
for right now, I'm just focused on getting through the semester. Um, because Lord knows that's a challenge in and of itself.
Yeah.
But um, yeah, but where I go from here, I will wait to see what doors are available, where my paths go, and you know, stay alive till then. So
Let's say like to then. No, that's real. Just keep moving.
yeah,
Nah, that's what's up, man. I definitely appreciate, you know, for those that don't know, I mean, if you didn't know, I was gonna say something in the beginning, and I was like, I forgot. Like, if I'm just gonna be honest, I just forgot. I just got so hyped, like, yo, someone from TU. But for those that don't know, Michael and I are good friends, and so I hit him up, said, hey, bro, you wanna hop on the pod, and lo and behold, my brother said, yes, sir, he there, right? And so thank you for doing
of
that, bro.
course.
I definitely appreciate it, and I don't know if you want to share any word for those that might be in a similar situation to you, or maybe somebody resonate with some part of your story. What is one thing that you can kind of like just share with them to encourage them on their journey as they continue to figure out things in college?
Hmm. I'd just say more than anything, keep going.
Mm,
Um, and and one thing I've held to a lot recently, that anything worth doing is never going to be easy.
yeah.
Um, but in doing so, in those hard times, keep in focus what an end goal is going to be, or why you're doing it. Because in that sense, things for me just become so much more. It becomes such a matter of higher importance. Of is if I, in this tough time, if I consider my end goal, or the principles driving me to do this, if it's not something that I'm willing to live by, just period, then maybe I shouldn't be doing it. But if this
Hmm.
is something that is worthwhile, and that this is the way that I want to live, if this is the man that I want to become,
Yeah.
then it's worth the struggle.
No, that's real. That's real. That's real. That's deep too. He said, just keep going, keep showing up through the struggle and all. I feel like a lot of people have difficulty when they run into like an obstacle. They
Right.
tend to get discouraged and think that it's impossible, or they get discouraged and think that they're not the one to do it, or whatever the case may be. But you're right, man. If it's worth doing, if it fits with, values or what you feel like your call is, if it fits, keep going.
Right. Yeah, I'm just talking to myself too. And not just to go to sleep the day before the exam, not having opened the textbook. Uh,
Too many of those. I feel you, bro.
far too many. But
Well, appreciate you, bro.
yeah,
Again
of
for
course.
hopping on. Hey, appreciate the listeners, people for listening, for tuning in. It's super appreciative, and my my hope is just that you continue to grow, continue to develop, continue to grow your wardrobe. That's my hope. That's my hope here. So if you want to hop on the podcast, you can feel free to. I think you can click like a link somewhere in the
Somewhere, something like that.
descriptions, or you can go to my my website, samsonsambeba.com. You can go to, where else can you go to? I don't even know. You can go on my Instagram, link in the bio type stuff, Facebook, Twitter, all of it. Not Twitter. I'm not on Twitter. I'm on TikTok. That's the one I was trying to say.
Hmm.
Lord help us if we're going to make it. Anyways, appreciate y'all for tuning in. I hope that you can see how you fit in the fitting room. Peace.